Neither the Republic nor the Jedi are prepared for another war. We would lose. Billions would die.
You have no idea what you've unleashed, Jedi. There's no place in the galaxy to hide from my wrath. Soon the Republic's failure will be complete, and nothing will stand in the way of the new Empire.
We're in Stockholm at a special Star Wars The Old Republic preview event here, and we caught up with one of the writers on the game, Hal Hood, and we thought we'd ask him a little bit about the story and what it's taken to sort of carve this epic MMO storyline out of, I guess, a block of rock or something like that. But first of all, like, I would imagine you're a huge team of writers. Could you just sort of give us an idea of how you're working and how many people are actually involved in writing on this game?
Well, we do have probably the largest writing team ever assembled for a video game ever. I can't give you the exact number because it's changed over time, but we have reached double digits in terms of the number of writers on the team. It's a large team of incredibly creative people, and it's wonderful fun to work with them and to develop these stories set in the Star Wars galaxy together. We're all fans of Star Wars, we're all experienced storytellers, and it's just a blast to come into work every morning and sit down with these amazing people and figure out, what are we going to write today?
So are you working as a team, or is it like, okay, that guy, he's responsible for the Sith Inquisitor quest line, or how does that work?
We do have certain writers who are assigned to particular classes. I co-wrote the Smuggler class content, and I was the primary author of the Jedi Knight class content. Other writers were in charge of classes like the Republic Trooper, the Imperial Agent, things like that. We also, all of us, wrote a lot of the multiplayer content that you will see in our game that's meant to be experienced as a group. You can play it solo, but it's actually more fun if you team up with your friends and play it together. So there was a lot of writing to be done in the game, and everybody contributed tremendously to the content.
So I guess it's fair to say that you're firmly on the light side of things then?
Not always. I wrote some multiplayer quests for the Empire faction, and that was a lot of fun. But also, one of the realities of Bioware games is that we're all about player choice, and we're all about posing ethical dilemmas to players and letting them sort out how they want to handle it. So even writing the Jedi Knight or the more heroic Republic Smuggler class, there are lots of opportunities for players to do very, very bad things while they're in those roles, and that was a lot of fun to write.
So I guess that's one of my questions, because you got 8 classes, and you know, for a casual Star Wars fan or even a hardcore one as myself, I'm like, why would I want to be a trooper, or why would I want to be an Imperial Guard when I can be a Jedi Knight or a Sith warrior? You know, sort of, it's kind of hard for me to imagine. Sort of, how do you sort of solve that puzzle? Because you want to make all the classes as interesting and as sort of important for the players.
Well, the reality is all the classes are as interesting and important for the players, and that was by design, and we knew that from the very beginning. The reality is, yes, there are Jedi and Sith in the game. There are people who can use the Force, but there are these other classes like the Bounty Hunter and the Imperial Agent and the Republic Trooper and the Smuggler who don't use the Force, but they are still the best of the best. They are the best. They are what they do. They are legends in the galaxy. So you're not just playing any smuggler. You're playing the greatest smuggler who ever lived. You're playing a smuggler that Han Solo would eat his heart out when he saw you running around, just completely making him look like an idiot. So that's the thing. All of the classes, in terms of gameplay and their value to the game, are equal. There's a reason to play every class in the game beyond just the story. They all have roles to fill and all have uses on the battlefield.
So you mentioned Han Solo there, and it's kind of hard to avoid him when you're talking about smugglers. But sort of, how much have you looked when you're looking at the storyline of the smuggler? Sort of at sort of, because I guess when you mention smuggler, any Star Wars fan would say Han Solo immediately. Sort of, how do you avoid that trapping of sort of making a clones Han Solo adventure, or you know, that sort of thing, and where do you want to lend things from Han Solo's legacy?
Right. Well, the key for me was to ensure that there was comedy. You know, Han Solo, he's a funny character, and that's one of the things that makes him such a memorable character in Star Wars. And the reality was, you know, in terms of exact plot points and things that are going on, you always need to bring something fresh and new. You can't just copy the traditional smuggler story, but at the same time, you want to make sure that it feels like the smuggler story. If you choose to play the smuggler, you have an idea in your head of the fantasy of playing that class and what it's going to feel like. So there needs to be just enough there to feel like you're fulfilling that fantasy, but enough that's different, that it feels fresh and exciting, and you need to know what happens next because you have no idea.
And sort of the opposite side of things from the smuggler, I guess, would be the bounty hunter on the dark side of things, and there you got Boba Fett, who's sort of a similar character, and that I think people would associate with that class. But for the trooper and the Imperial Guard, there might not be these iconic figures to sort of draw from and sort of people could identify with. How do you solve that problem and sort of so that people will feel like, well, this is an important part of the fantasy as well?
Well, one of the great things is that with iconic classes like the Republic Trooper and the Imperial Agent, we have the opportunity to introduce new things to Star Wars. These are classes that are there for people who have never had a chance to play those kinds of characters before. And it's really fun, especially something like the Imperial Agent that's never really been done in Star Wars before. The author of that piece, Alex Freed, had tremendous freedom to be inventive and original and to craft an iconic experience. And it's going to feel unlike anything you've ever experienced before in a Star Wars game as a result. It's really there for people who are like, well, I know the Jedi, I know this and that, but Imperial Agent, okay, that sounds interesting. And they're really going to have a great time with it. And the same thing with the Republic Trooper. The Republic Trooper is the soldier of the Star Wars galaxy. And, you know, it's a war story. It's Star Wars, so there's always conflicts going on in the galaxy. And for the Trooper, you're going to get that ground level experience of these battles, but you're one of the greatest commandos, crack commandos in the galaxy. You are always sent in to the most dangerous battles to achieve the most difficult objectives. It's going to be a really epic war story.
And as far as the story goes, you've got all these movies to draw from, but you know, more importantly for a gamer like me, you've got the two old games, Knights of the Republic 1 and 2. So can you touch on any aspects of how you sort of want to tie this together to sort of Bioware Star Wars universe, which I feel the Old Republic is sort of Bioware Star Wars. How will you sort of try and sort of bring that whole fantasy together, because it's thousands of years after the events of the first two games?
It's actually not thousands of years after, it's hundreds of years after. It's about 300 years after the events of the original Knights of the Old Republic. And one of the things is, everybody working on this game is a tremendous fan of those original games. You know, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, we're big fans of them. We've all played them multiple times. We love the characters, we love the lore, and we absolutely wanted to continue the legacy set up by those stories and pay them off in our game. If you are a fan of those first two games, you have every reason to want to play this one, because it really is the fulfillment of the plot that began in those two games.
And I guess this is a question about how you're going to take it further after launch. What sort of stories will there be left to tell after launch and that you could bring out? Because I guess there's going to be some sort of conclusion at the end of each class journey.
Well, our approach to it is very similar to developing a television series. There may be long story arcs that take a long time for players to complete, and they will reach a natural conclusion, but there are always unanswered questions. There are always new objectives to complete, new enemies to fight, and that's what's going to give the game longevity, because the story's never over. There's always going to be more to do. There's always going to be something new to discover. New enemies are going to challenge you, and you as a character will continue to grow as long as you play the game.
Right, I think we've reached the end of this interview at least, and I'm going to get back to playing. I guess it's Flashpoint time right now, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Hope you're enjoying the game.
Prejudice set to maximum.